Hello and welcome, I'm Gord Graff. No other molding that I know of states grace and elegance quite the way crown molding does. Whether it's on top of a set of kitchen cabinets or on a wall unit or on a single purpose cabinet, crown molding definitely says sophistication. But the downside to cutting crown molding is that it can and oftentimes is an awkward proposition. Cutting a long piece of molding, balancing it between the miter saw's table and its fence can be challenging at times. And even when you think you get it right, if you're off just a hair, it'll mess up on your cut. So I've designed and built a jig that captures the crown molding. And it doesn't matter whether the crown molding spring angle is 38 degrees, 45 degrees, or even 52 degrees. The jig captures the molding, making sure that your cuts are going to be perfect. Now, whether or not you're cutting an inside crown, an outside crown, whether the crown is ornate or not, makes no difference. It's the same thing with cutting around the corners. I mean, you can cut crown around corners inside your home, on cabinets. It makes no difference. So let's take a look at this jig, and in fact, let's go and build one. Well, now that I've cut the three main pieces of the jig, it's time to do a little bit of assembly. Now, what I've done is I've marked the center mark of each of the pieces, and I've gone ahead and marked my screw locations. Now, I've kept far away from the center mark, or where the blade is actually going to go, with the screws for a purpose. And that is, when the jig is assembled and I tilt that saw blade to the left or to the right, I don't want that saw blade to come through a screw, so I'm careful about where I put my screws. One last thing to do before I'm finished with this sub-assembly, and that's to check it for square. And it's perfect. Now, the beauty of this is that this jig is adjustable. Now, in order to get that adjustment, what I need to do is I need to cut slots at strategically placed locations on the jig, not to interfere with anything underneath. These are 3/8 of an inch wide, and I've used 1/4 inch carriage bolts. So with the workpiece clamped in the vise and to the bench, I've placed a straight edge where I want my router to ride against and cut my slot. There's just one more thing I have to do before I mount the jig to my saw. What I want to do is I want to spread these fences out a little bit further to give the saw, or to give the jig, a little bit more stability. And second of all, I need to consider how I'm going to attach the jig to the saw itself. Now, you could clamp it, and I've done that before, but I like to have something that's more semi-permanent. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 1/4 inch machine bolts. I'm going to come through the jig, and on the back, as opposed to having a nut on it, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch coupler. They're easier to grab, especially when you're on a job site, and they work just as well as a regular nut does. The other place that I'm going to mount this saw is here and here. These are 5/16 inch couplers, and they are on 5/16 inch bolts that come up through the base of my saw and are attached there. So I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places of attachment. So I'll go ahead and do that. In order to drill a 1/4 inch hole in the center of that 3/8 inch slot, what I did was I took my drill bit with a 3/8 inch brad point bit, and I moved my stop where I needed it. I started the drill and it made a slight indentation. I did all 4 of them, and I came back with a 1/4 inch brad point bit, drilled them through, and then installed my 1/4 20 hardware. The last thing to do now is to kerf cut the jig itself. So I'll move this out of the way, tighten that up. Well, there's no time like the present to take this jig for a test drive. Now, it goes without saying, but bears repeating, that in order to get good quality cuts on crown molding, or any other molding for that matter, your saw has to be accurate. I've taken the time to set my saw, and it's right on the money, and it's ready to cut crown. Let's cut some 4.5 inch or 4 1/4 inch crown. Now that's exactly what I was looking for. I hope that this has inspired you to tackle crown molding, whether it's for your next set of kitchen cabinets, a standalone cabinet, or for your home. I'm Gord Graff. Thanks for watching.